My other point is, I believe if Bernie Sanders had been the nominee, that Donald Trump would not have improved his standing among Latino voters over 2016. I think Donald Trump would not have doubled his support among black women over 2016. I think that Donald Trump, if Bernie had been the nominee, Donald Trump would not have gotten the highest share of non-white voters that any Republican candidate has gotten since Richard Nixon in 1960.
The most racist American president ever, the one whose racism was the most central feature of his presidency, according to vast swaths of the media. Amazing.
I mean, yeah, like that outcome about him receiving a larger share of the non-white vote in a presidential election since Richard Nixon it baffles. I mean, because he's not going to get anywhere near a majority, but I mean, it goes against every single thing that like the media has programmed, or their beliefs about like how American voters demographically are supposed to behave.
It destroys the only argument for the Democratic Party as a viable concern for like the aspirations of humanity going forward. Like if you ask any Democrat, like, what's going on with this? Like, look, you're saying this is the best we can do, this like gridlock forever, then how the hell are we ever going to address stuff like climate change realistically? And they say, well, give it time. The country is getting more brown. We're browning. We're demographically changing. And those young voters and those minority voters, they're going to see the horrible racist GOP, and they're going to say, no, thank you, sir. But
Don't open the oven. Don't open the oven. You're letting the heat out. It's browning.
And what we're seeing is that, like, those racial categories that for liberals are becoming incredibly brittle and defined. Like, they're into 23andMe shit. They're into like blood quantum stuff about like standpoint, really boiling down not to like experience of one's life, like day to day, but literally like you're fucking 23andMe. But you're never going to be able, like, it's never going to, people say, well, what about, black people? Black people are the fucking thing that all of these concepts are defined around. They're the other. They're the internal other inherently. But but a lot of liberals assumed, a lot of Democrats assume that people think that minorities think about race the way that they do. And the thing is, we know for a fact they don't. Being a Latino is way more of a varied, lived American experience than being a black person is. And as a result, racism is not processed as an issue, as a dividing line of and a defining element of one's politics the way that it is for black people. And that's true for any other minority. And that means that your assumption that the clear, horrible racism, and it is, according to the definitions of like civil discourse, it's racism, will inherently pull them together in like they'll recognize the threat to themselves. But it's like, if you don't think about yourself in those terms, that racism doesn't bite the way that these white people assume it must. And that means that they're like, yeah, well, racism, spacism, like kids in cages, like, they're not my fucking kids. What are you talking about? Like, I'm a Mexican American whose family's been here since the 19th century. What the fuck do you think I care about some fucking Central American speaking an Indian dialect who I don't want living in my fucking neighborhood? And they just cannot. And the thing is, if that's true, then the Democrats will never be able to assemble a dominant coalition, like a New Deal style coalition, to take over. They cannot, because they have said that the deadlock we have is it cannot be resolved through politics. We have to always tack to the middle. You can't change the electorate. So demographics will change the math. And we know now, I think, we have the 20 years of data now that that's not going to happen, which means the Democrats cannot save us, like in any sense, even in like the compromise Sorkin-y, like muddle through sense. Like they are as apocalyptically accelerationist a political party as the Republicans are.
If you want to know how liberals are taking this, I saw one very respected liberal blogger explain the huge shift from Clinton votes in 2016 to Trump votes in 2020, almost by a 2-to-1 margin in some more southern counties in Texas that were heavily Latino, talking 90%, as a desire for caudilloism. People who have been Americans since like 1870, who haven't been ruled by a caudillo for like 160 fucking years. They want caudillo. This is the end result of this. This is the end result of this. They really can caucus with Richard Spencer.
Yep.
If these people don't vote your way they have a genetic desire to return to their memory of Santa Ana. Like, you are mentally ill beyond repair. We can do nothing for you. I wish you good luck. I wish you good luck.
I in thinking about this, like the Latino vote, I mean, it was like clearly in Florida, that really killed Biden. You know, I mean, a lot of people are blaming it on the socialismo, you know, and like tying Biden and the Democratic Party to Fidel Castro or Maduro or shit like that. Because, you know, like, I mean, the first really big result of the night, and one that was the real indicator for how things were going to go on Tuesday, was the Miami-Dade County results.
Oh, yeah. That was a real canary.
That Biden won. I mean, he won it by 9 points. But, like, he needed to win it by 20 or 30 points like Hillary Clinton did. Or, like, I mean, she didn't win Florida either. But, like, I mean, that was an indicator. And, you know, I mean, and it's also an indicator of, like, this idea that, like, the Latino vote out there is anything like a comprehensive thing is ludicrous. But then again, in Florida, they just passed the minimum wage fucking raise. And then there was a similar. What was it? They are reenfranchising felons in the last election while the state continues to go red. And then, like, similarly, all over the country, like, they're legalizing weed everywhere. And I mean, they legalized weed in New Jersey, in Montana. They legalized psilocybin.
Hey, I'm smoking here.
They legalized psilocybin in D.C. And it's like, well, that's good. It's all we have left.
We're going to New Jersey, and we're going to Montana, we're going to Oregon, and we're going to get Doritos, and we're going to get Mountain Dew.
I mean, people talk about that in terms of how it's evidence of, like, there's a progressive desire, but honestly, to me, it feels like somebody, like, in a hospice hitting the fucking morphine button. You know, it's like, we have no chance of anything being better. Give me drugs. Give me more options for narcanization.
I mean, it doesn't. It says something that, like, yeah, like Biden was stung by, like, a lack of enthusiasm among younger voters overall. And you're telling me, like, he can't even pretend to just be like, yeah, we're legalizing weed, man. Come on. We're smoking Thai stick.
No,
brother.
because that scares away their grandparents who he wants to vote for him in the fucking suburbs.
Oh, by the way, really quick, remember all those polls showing that Biden was actually doing great with senior citizens?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Trump won senior citizens.
He was doing, I'll tell you this, this is my belief on the fucking how the polls are so wrong. Because, like, the polls obviously were fucked in 2016, and people said, well, why? No one really knew. And now this is one thing. We have now more data. And to me, I'm ready to call it, as Dave Wasserman to say, I've seen enough, is that at this point, a poll is not a poll of voters. It's not a poll of likely voters or registered voters or any of those screens. It is a poll of people who answer the phone and give answers to a pollster. And that is not the electorate. And they could try to fix that and, like, have their model, but that is, in my opinion, a distinction between people that shouldn't exist, like, in a poll sampling. Like, you're just supposed to assume that this is like a cross section. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Especially with this big bump in turnout, I think a lot of people, because it's a crisis election and it's so things are bad, and they see all the day on TV, hey, there's an election, maybe the bad things can go away, that they're not picking up the goddamn phone to talk to you. They haven't thought about it. They don't really give a shit. Talking to a pollster is like voting. It's like, hey, look at me. I'm participating in the Democratic pageantry. Mm-hmm. And if you're bringing in a big bunch of people who have not assimilated that civic ethic around voting, they're not going to pick up the phone for a number they don't recognize. And that means that these polls will always be systemically mutated.
It just
the polls are cucked. The polls are literally cucked because only cucks answer polls.
I mean, only cucks answer their fucking phone when it's a number that's not saved in it.
Yes.
You know what though? Like, I think an element of the cuckening is just like the absolute exponential proliferation of fucking like robocalls and fucking people trying to scam you and get your social security number. I get calls from Chinese people like 5 times a week.
Oh God, so many Chinese people.
That's me and my friends. Sorry.
You're saying what the polls actually are. The polls are polls of busybodies. People who want to give you money. The polls
the
are
kind of people for whom Trump's rudeness is a key issue. For the ones who do think that things like national honor matter.
The sort of people who are
pick it up.
On hold with their bank for an hour, and they get that automated message saying, "Would you like to take a survey about your experience today?" And they say, "Ooh, I would." Indeed,
Yes.
I would like to spend 5 more minutes on this call to give you a little piece of my mind. But that's it. But I mean, that's interesting. Also, in the context of the way that kind of social media has broken the brains of, I don't know, maybe half the population, while the other half lives in just kind of a like blissful ignorance of all the crap that goes on online. Like you have maybe there is like a real distinction now between people who do want to share something. Or say what's on their mind, and people who are like, no, I don't have time. For
Yeah.
this. I'm not.
And those are going to be Trump
I'm not-
supporters.
I'm not
Those are going to
putting
be
the pick.
disproportionately Trump supporters
Or
at this
Virgil,
election.
they don't need to fucking tell a pollster what's on their mind because they're sharing their thoughts every fucking day on Facebook with other people who are fucking, interested in what they have to say instead of some sort of like disembodied voice on the phone asking you details about, the child tunnels.